Welcome to this episode of And So It Flows. I'm your host, Nicole Krawcke, Chief Editor of Plumbing and Mechanical and PM Engineer magazines. Today's topic of discussion is boilers, and we're joined by Ray Wohlfarth, President of Fire and Ice in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Ray writes a monthly newsletter on commercial boilers and is a longtime PM columnist. Ray, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
So Ray, why don't we get started? Tell our listeners a little bit about how you got your start in the industry.
When I graduated high school, the economy was pretty rough back then, and my relatives were in the steam fitters, and they suggested I go to work there. They said it's a great opportunity, and my parents were all for it because they said everybody needs heating. So I got involved with the apprenticeship, and I took the tests, and I got in, and haven't turned back yet. I love it.
So what made you want to specialize in boilers?
When I was a first-year apprentice, my first job was, my first job was working on a boiler, installing it as a first-year apprentice. And I was lucky the journeyman asked me to stick around while he was starting the boiler. And when he started it, oh my goodness, it banged and popped and it scared everybody in the building. And they all ran out of the building, and he had this grin from ear to ear. And he said, "This is what I like to do." And he got that boiler fine-tuned so it was nice and smooth. And I thought, man, I'm hooked. This is awesome, all this power. And so that's how I got involved with boilers.
So when and how did you get into writing? Because you don't really typically think of somebody, a contractor who wants to write about, what they do.
When I was a first-year apprentice, I took a writing class with community college, and I loved it. It was an instant attraction, and my teacher loved my writing, and she tried to get me hooked up with with a scholarship to be a writer. And I was all excited. I went home and I told my parents, and they said, "Are you nuts? There's no money in writing." So I ended up putting it on hold. And about 15 years ago, I had a pretty bad health issue. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to get back into my writing. And I love it. I spend every morning from about 6 to 8 writing. It's just something I enjoy. I've written 11 books on boilers. I just wrote a novel, and I wrote a kid's book. So
oh, that's great. Fun. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Is the kid's book about boilers?
No.
So why don't you tell us, based on, you've been in the industry a long time, what are the greatest lessons you've learned from your career in the heating industry?
I think what I like about the industry is it keeps you humble. Just when you think you have it all figured out and you're going to be, everything, it has a way of smacking you upside the head and saying, "Hey, bet you didn't think about this." And that's how I like in our industry. I get to learn something new every day. And, as old as I am, I'm like, this is pretty cool that I get to do it and learn something new.
That is pretty cool. What would be the most common mistakes that you see in boiler systems, and why?
The most common mistake I see is improperly installed boilers. And a lot of it is because the techs don't read the manuals. And it's becoming worse now because the piping is so critical on the newer type of boilers. But what makes it even worse is the maintenance manuals are 2-3 times larger than what they used to be. And the manufacturers will hide little snippets inside there and say, "Hey, you need to remember this." It was almost like an afterthought that someone caught in editing it. But that's the thing that I see most commonly.
So what can help prevent those mistakes? Just reading the manual, or should they go to trainings?
Reading the manual, and I see a lot of the younger people are looking to YouTube videos now. Like my kids they'll say, hey, they look for a YouTube video on how to do everything. And I think that as an industry, we need to do more YouTube videos on how do you do certain things? Why do you do certain things? And you keep them short. And I think that's what the younger generation is going to be looking at.
Okay. Now you brought up maintenance. So what advice would you give to contractors or, plumbers in the field when troubleshooting a commercial boiler system?
Like on a commercial boiler system, it's more of a holistic type of an approach, because what will happen in one area can affect adversely or other parts of the system. And you have to service it as a system rather than a component. And that's what I like about it. And once you understand how a system operates, it works pretty well and you're able to understand it. The other thing I see is that if you have a hydronics background, if you go to use your hydronics background on a steam system, it never works well because they're completely different. And if you use your logic, you're going to have problems if you use your hydronics logic on a steam system.
Yeah, I think Dan Hollihan has mentioned that quite a bit.
Yeah, right.
So when it comes to advancements in technology, what boiler trends have you seen take off in recent years?
What I'm seeing now is the controlled adaptability. The owners can hold their cell phone up and adjust the firing rate on their boiler from their cell phones. There is so much information. You can trend everything, and that's what we're seeing everywhere in the industry. And to me, I'm old school, I guess. It seems like it's too much information, but it just seems like the owners can't get enough information from their systems and equipment.
Now, are these controls providing more what's the word I'm looking for here? Trouble during installation? Is it more intuitive for them? Is it easier to install, or is it making problems?
It's supposed to be more intuitive. What we find is, most of the boiler companies have a backnet compatible control, which will communicate with the building system. But in most instances, they are really having a hard time communicating with each other. I'll give you, for instance, we had one client that had a system communicating with his building, and they just didn't talk very well with each other. And this thing would shut off the boilers in the middle of the night on a cold night. And we would have to go out there at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning to try to figure out what's going on. And when we disconnected it from the building system, everything worked fine. And I think that what happens is that the equipment controls, I think you should just enable or disable the controls on a piece of equipment and let the manufacturer decide how to properly operate it.
Okay. Where do you see the boiler market heading over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's going away, which is sad to me because we're starting to see the trend of everybody getting electrification and decarbonization, and they think that boilers are a inefficient way to heat a building, when in reality, there's so many advantages to boilers. It's a safer system. It's very efficient, and it's the most comfortable heating system you can get. And I hope that our industry wakes up and realizes what a gem we're going to be losing if we just go to simply heat pump systems.
Do you think there will always be a place, though? You mentioned, it's the most comfortable heating system, with the higher end homes with hydronic technology, radiant heating, all that. Don't you think there will always be a place for it, or no?
I don't see it because the industry and the world is really trying to vilify the natural gas and fossil fuel industry. I hope so. I mean, but I just see that everybody's being taught that, gas is bad and electricity is good. And what frustrates me is that most of your electricity is generated by fossil fuels. So it doesn't make sense. I'm just not sure about it. But
Okay. Well, that pretty much summed up everything on our end. Was there anything else in general you wanted to add?
no, I love this industry, and I hope that we can bring some young people in. I was at an ASHRAE show several years ago, and I was talking with one of the people that high up in ASHRAE, and he said that the same thing. He said the average age in our industry was 58 years old. And I hope that we can get younger people involved, because it's a great feeling. There's no feeling better than to go in and fix somebody's building and look on their face and to make it comfortable. And to look at a building and say, wow, I put the heating in that, or I worked on that. And so I hope that we're able to attract younger people into our industry.
Okay. Well, thanks again for taking the time today, Ray.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.